In the summer of 2023, economists at Sweden's central bank published a routine monthly inflation report. Buried inside it was a sentence that would have been completely incomprehensible 5 years earlier. Consumer prices in Stockholm had risen more than expected. Hotels were full. Restaurants were booked out for weeks. Transport infrastructure was under strain. And the single identified cause of this localized inflation spike was not a trade disruption, not an energy shock, not a supply chain failure. It was one American woman on a concert tour. The Eras Tour, Taylor Swift's 2023 to 2024 global run, is the highest-grossing concert tour in recorded history, generating over $2 billion in direct ticket revenue. But that number, as striking as it is, tells almost none of the actual story. Because the total estimated economic footprint of that single tour across the United States alone has been calculated at approximately $4.6 billion. For context, that figure exceeds the entire annual GDP of several sovereign nations. The economy of Belize, the economy of the Maldives, the economy of the Central African Republic. A single concert tour, one person, 18 months. So the question worth asking is not whether Taylor Swift is culturally significant. That conversation is well and truly settled. The question is how a musician became a measurable economic force, powerful enough that central banks track her movements and governments compete for her attention. Now, the obvious explanation is popularity. More fans, more tickets, more money. But that explanation breaks down the moment you look at where the money is actually being spent. Taylor Swift is not simply a very popular artist generating large concert revenues. She has become something economists genuinely do not have clean language for yet. A one-person economic multiplier engine that activates entire regional economies, distorts national statistics, and commands geopolitical leverage that most mid-sized corporations would envy. The ticket money is almost the least interesting part. And this matters far beyond the entertainment industry, because what the Swift phenomenon actually reveals is something important about how modern economies concentrate and amplify value, and how some of the most powerful economic forces of the next decade may not be companies, governments, or commodities. They may be individual brands, operating at a scale that makes traditional economic categories look increasingly inadequate. Understanding how this works tells you something real about where economic power is actually moving. Reason 1. The multiplier nobody counted. The $2 billion in ticket revenue is what makes headlines. The $4.6 billion economic footprint is what actually matters. The gap between those two numbers is explained by something economists call the spending multiplier, the ripple effect of every dollar that enters a local economy and gets spent, respent, and spent again before it finally leaks out. For most concerts, that multiplier is relatively modest. People come from within a reasonable radius. They buy a ticket, maybe a drink. Then they go home. The local economic boost is real, but contained. The Eras Tour broke that model entirely. Research by QuestionPro estimated that the average attendee spent approximately $1,300 per show, not including the ticket itself. Hotels booked out within hours of dates being announced. Flights from across the country and internationally filled months in advance. Entire local costume and fabric industries reported spikes in sales as fans built elaborate themed outfits. Denver reported $140 million in direct economic activity during Swift's 2-night stay. Seattle reported $83 million. Cincinnati reported over $80 million. These are the kinds of numbers a mid-sized factory generates over an entire year, delivered in a single weekend. Reason 2. The Singapore precedent. In early 2024, the Singaporean government made a decision that caused genuine diplomatic friction across Southeast Asia. They paid Taylor Swift an exclusivity fee, reportedly between $2 and $3 million per show, to ensure her 6 Singapore dates were the only Southeast Asian stops on the entire Eras tour. The Philippines, Thailand, and Indonesia reacted with open frustration. Tourism ministers issued formal complaints. The Thai Prime Minister personally raised the issue publicly. Think about what that actually means. Multiple sovereign governments were engaged in direct diplomatic conflict over the routing decisions of a single artist's tour schedule. The Thai Prime Minister, who has a country to run, took time out of his day to formally object to a concert itinerary. Singapore's calculation was straightforward. Officials estimated those 6 shows would generate approximately 500 million Singapore dollars in tourism revenue, roughly $370 million US. Against a reported exclusivity payment of $12 to $18 million total, that is an extraordinary return on investment. The Singaporean government essentially ran a trade policy intervention disguised as a concert booking. And it worked. Fans flew in from across the region. Hotels ran at capacity. The knock-on spending across retail, food and beverage, and transport was substantial and measurable. This is not how we normally think about concert tours. This is how we think about World Cups. The difference is that World Cups require nations. This required a routing decision. Reason 3. The industries she moves. The Eras tour's economic reach extended well beyond the cities it visited. When Swift publicly started dating Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce in late 2023, Chiefs merchandise sales increased by 400% within days. Kelce's jersey became the top-selling NFL jersey almost overnight. Games Swift attended drew significantly higher television audiences than comparable games without her presence. The NFL spent decades building the most valuable sports league in America. Then, one celebrity relationship increased viewership in ways the league itself couldn't manufacture. And then there is the vinyl industry. Swift's albums have consistently broken vinyl sales records at a time when the format was supposed to be a niche nostalgia product. Her 2023 album alone sold more than 1 million vinyl copies in its first week. Independent record pressing plants, a manufacturing sector that looked destined for irrelevance a decade ago, suddenly found themselves operating with years-long backlogs. She did not just sell records. She functionally revived an entire manufacturing subsector. Reason 4. The re-recording project as economic warfare. Perhaps the most structurally interesting dimension of Swift's economic footprint is one that gets framed almost entirely as a personal dispute, rather than what it actually is: a deliberate and remarkably effective market intervention. When her original masters were sold to private equity without her consent, Swift announced she would re-record her catalogue and encourage fans to stream and purchase the new versions instead. The goal was simple: make the original masters economically less valuable by flooding the market with a superior licensed alternative. It worked. The re-recorded versions largely displaced the originals on streaming platforms. Assets that had been acquired for hundreds of millions of dollars became significantly less valuable. And Swift accomplished this not through litigation, not through regulation, not through lobbying, but through consumer behavior. In plain English, she ran a private equity playbook back against private equity, using consumer behavior as a financial instrument. It is the kind of market maneuver business schools build case studies around, except the protagonist in this one wears friendship bracelets. Now, it would be easy to walk away from all of this, concluding that Taylor Swift is simply the most talented marketer of her generation. And there is certainly some truth to that. But the more important conclusion is structural. What Swift has built is not merely a fan base, it is an economic constituency. a globally distributed network of consumers whose spending behavior she can direct, concentrate, and deploy with a precision that most corporations and many governments genuinely cannot match. The slightly uncomfortable truth underneath all of this is that the engine of the entire phenomenon is voluntary participation. Every hotel booking, every flight, every vinyl record, every concert ticket, every Chiefs jersey. Millions of individual decisions creating an economic force large enough to influence cities, industries, and governments. And that may be the most important lesson in the entire story. Taylor Swift didn't build a company. She didn't control a commodity. She didn't inherit state power. She built a global network of people willing to move together. The central bank tracked the inflation. The governments competed for the tourism revenue. But the real asset was the audience.